This video is brought to you by water. Stay hydrated, kids. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Darian and today I'm going to be doing my December wrap-up. So in December I had a fairly good reading month. I read, how many books did I read? I read 7 books, which I think is the most I've read in a few months, but I could be wrong. Maybe, I don't remember, but honestly I was on a pretty good roll for most of the month, and then once the holidays hit, like once I finished school, I kind of crashed and I really did not feel like reading anything because my brain was just so tired from finals. But I did do a 24-hour readathon on New Year's Eve, which kind of helped me read more, even though I actually only finished 1 book during that readathon, but it kind of helped me finish the year on a strong note-ish. But anyways, without further ado, I'll just get into the books that I read in December. So the first book that I finished in December was One Day in December by Josie Silver. This was a reread for me. I read this for the first time last year around this time, and I just really love this book. I know people don't like it. I know Jess really hates it. It was on her worst books of the year list, but this is one of my favorite books. It just does something to me. Like, I find it so cozy, especially the audiobook. I really love listening to this audiobook, and it's a book that I want to read every year around this time of year, like during Christmas time, even though it's not really a Christmas book. Okay, I'm so bad. I always forget to explain what books are about during my wrap-ups, but this book follows this girl named Lori, and one day Lori's on the bus home from work, and at one of the bus stops she looks out the window and she sees this guy sitting there, and Lori has never really believed in love at first sight or anything, but when she sees this guy sitting at the bus stop, it's totally love at first sight. She's all of a sudden so enamored by him, and he sees her too. He rushes to try to get on the bus to get to her, and the bus leaves. He doesn't get on in time, and then she spends the next year of her life looking for this guy, referring to him as busboy. Her and her best friend are very determined to find this guy, and then just when Lori is starting to give up hope that she's ever gonna see this guy again, she does find him again, but it's when her best friend introduces him to her as her new boyfriend. And of course her best friend has no idea that this is the guy she saw on the bus. So this guy, his name is Jack, and the book takes place over 10 years, so it's basically from the moment Lori and Jack first laid eyes on each other until 10 years later, obviously. So it follows the complications of this relationship that Lori has with her best friend and her best friend's boyfriend. Did I say his name is Jack? I think I did. And this book also has dual perspectives, so we follow Lori's perspective and also Jack's perspective. They both believe that the other person doesn't remember them, but they both remember each other, and it's all very complicated and it's very dramatic, and I just love the drama. Like, I'm sorry, I know, again, this plot is very messy. Like, there's a lot of things that happen, and sometimes it's very annoying. Jack can be extremely annoying sometimes, but I don't know what to tell you. I really love this book for some reason. I mean, I don't think it's a bad book at all. I think it's definitely over dramatic at times. I think there are some problematic elements to it. There is cheating in this book, and I just want to make it clear because I talk so highly of this book. I do not condone cheating in any way. I hate reading about cheating. I hate it. It's the worst thing. The only reason that the cheating in this book doesn't ruin the whole book for me is it's not like the cheating happens and everyone's like, haha, that's fine, everything's fine now. Like, there's a lot of repercussions to the actions of the characters in this book, which I think is good because the characters in this book mess up a whole lot and they definitely deal with the consequences of that. So that's the only reason why I still would recommend this book, and why it doesn't completely turn me off from this book is because there's just so much drama, and I find the drama just like, yes. Like, I wouldn't want to know these people in real life. I wouldn't want these to be my friends in real life. There's just something about, like I said, all the drama in this book that I really love. And I love the narration of the audiobook, so if you do pick this book up, I would highly recommend listening to the audiobook because, I don't know, I love the narrators, I just love it, and I gave this book 5 stars because I love it. The next book I read in December, finally, was The Invisible Life of Adaline by V.E. Schwab. As you can see, I did tab this book. I tabbed it quite a lot. I love just looking at these tabs. But anyways, so I'm pretty sure everyone knows what this book is because this is probably like one of the most popular books on booktube right now. But just in case you don't know, this book follows this girl named Adaline, and she's living in the 1700s, and she is supposed to be married off to this guy, and she really does not want to be married, and so she ends up praying to the gods, basically asking to kind of get out of the situation and for her freedom, but she accidentally prays to the gods at night, which you're not supposed to do, and so this god comes along who's kind of the devil, but he's not actually the devil, but like for the purpose of this explanation, he is the devil. And he hears her prayer and he basically grants her freedom, but he basically grants her immortality, so she's able to live forever. That's what immortality means. But the kind of consequence of this is that every person she ever meets will forget her as soon as she leaves their eyesight. Eyeline? Whatever. As soon as they don't see her anymore, they will forget her. I think that makes sense. So we kind of follow her through the next like 300 years. So this book goes back and forth between the past, when she first, like when this first happens to her, and you know, her family forgets her and she's starting to learn how to kind of live on her own, because even though she still interacts with people, she is essentially all by herself because, like I said, no one will remember her. So we go back and forth between the past and the present. The present is in 2014. She's in New York City. We follow her around until we finally meet this guy named Henry, and Henry ends up remembering her. And he's the first person who has ever remembered her since she made this deal with the devil. His name is Luc. So I'm just gonna call him Luc. I don't want to say too much more than that because, I mean, there's a lot that happens in this book, but at the same time there isn't. Like, this is, I think a lot of people have said this too, but this is a very, very slow moving book, which I love. I love a good slow plot as long as the writing is good, and the writing in this book is some of the best writing I've ever read. V.E. Schwab's writing is just so beautiful in this book, and this is the first book I've ever read from her, but I have a feeling that her writing style in this book is slightly different from her other books, because I can't imagine the same writing in like A Darker Shade of Magic or something. Maybe I'm wrong, you can let me know if I'm wrong, but I just found this writing so beautiful. There were so many quotes that I absolutely loved in this book. Like, the writing is really what, the reason I didn't mind that the plot was so slow is because the writing was just so lovely to read and I was obsessed with it. So I definitely loved the writing in this book. I also heard a lot of people don't like Henry in this book. I love him and I really relate to him for a lot of reasons. His story is really heartbreaking, just like Addie's is. Like, I think V.E. Schwab really captured really well the loneliness that Addie feels, because I mean, she lives 300 years with nobody remembering her. Like, it's such a heartbreaking story, and the ending so I know a lot of people have seen like people absolutely sobbing at the end of this book, and I was expecting like this completely heartbreaking ending. I thought my soul was gonna be ripped out of my chest and stomped on into a million pieces, and like in a way it was, but not for the reasons I thought it was going to be. If that makes any sense. I definitely don't want to spoil anything, but I really loved how she ended this book. I thought that there wasn't really a better way to end it. Like, I loved the ending so much. Of course, I don't want to say anything, but I just I loved it so much. I just really loved everything that V.E. Schwab decided to do in this book. I thought every direction she took was the right direction. Like, I couldn't have written it better myself. Obviously, I'm not a writer, but like, there's nothing that I would want to change about this book is what I'm trying to say. So hopefully all that is making sense, but if you couldn't tell, I absolutely loved this book, and I also gave it 5 stars. I got really lucky with the books that I was reading at the beginning of the month, but yeah, this was just so amazing to read. I definitely want to reread it one day, and I highly, highly recommend this book. It definitely lived up to the hype for me, so yeah. I would really recommend it. Even if you don't like slow moving books, like, I still would really recommend this just because the writing is just so, it's so beautiful. So yeah. The next book that I read was A Boy Called Christmas by Matt Haig. This is a middle grade Christmas book, obviously. I know he has like a series of these, but I don't think, like, I think the books kind of stand on their own, but they're part of a series. But this isn't, anyways, this is the first book in that series, and it's about a boy, and his name is Nicholas. You can probably guess where this is going. And he lives with his father, and his mother died when he was young. Well, he is still young, but like younger, and they're very poor, and then his father is chosen to go on this mission to find elves, and if he succeeds then he will be paid a huge sum of money, which obviously would be very helpful for them in their situation. So his father goes on this mission, and after months and months and months he still hasn't returned, so Nicholas kind of takes it upon himself to go after his dad and try to find him, and he ends up finding this land where the elves live, and you know, a lot of stuff happens, and this is basically a Santa origin story, so this is not a spoiler obviously, but Nicholas, it's kind of how he becomes Santa Claus, and I thought this was really, really cute. Like, I had heard great things about this series, and since it was getting close to Christmas, I thought it would be a good time to read it, and I listened to the audiobook, and the audiobook is narrated by Stephen Fry, and it was so amazing. Like, obviously we all know Stephen Fry is amazing, but I just really, really loved listening to this book. It was really funny, and it was also a lot darker than I thought it was gonna be. Like, people were dying left and right, and I was like, oh my god, like this is some dark shit going on. But anyways, I thought it was really fun. I thought it was really cute. I really liked it, and it was really short, so it was just a quick, easy read to get through, and I thought it was the perfect thing to read during Christmas time. I really like to read the other books in the series that Matt Haig has written, and I really like Matt Haig as an author. Like, I have read one non-fiction book written by him, but I really like his writing style, and I know like The Midnight Library just came out, and I really want to read that one. So anyways, I would highly recommend this if you're just looking for a quick Christmassy read. I mean, obviously it's not Christmas anymore, but maybe next year. But yeah, I gave this book 4 stars. I thought it was really cute, and I recommend it. The next book I read was Night of Cake and Puppets by Laini Taylor. I love this book so much. So this is a novella. It's really, really short, and it follows the characters of Susanna and Mick from the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series. This book takes place like during the first book when Susanna and Mick go on their first date, and in Daughter of Smoke and Bone you know that Susanna has had a crush on Mick for a really long time, but they've never really spoken to each other, and then like you know that they had their first date and they start dating, but you never get the story of that. So this is that story, because in the book, if I remember correctly, they kind of just all of a sudden are together and you don't really get much more information than that. So this is the story of their first date, and it is just the cutest thing. I loved this so much. It made me so happy. Like, it was the perfect way for their first date to have gone. Wow, did that make any sense? And also, Laini Taylor's husband, Jim DiBartolo, he did some illustrations in the book. So like, we got this. I don't know how well you can see that. Got these little cats. I know there's some other illustrations. Like, you have this. Like, I don't know. It's just, obviously this is another quick and easy read to get through. I think you have to read Daughter of Smoke and Bone in order to read this. I wouldn't recommend reading this if you haven't, because I mean, first of all, there's not like any huge spoilers for the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series in this book, but like it does mention things that did happen, and I think you would just be confused if you haven't read Daughter of Smoke and Bone yet. But also, like, these two are my favorite characters in that series. I love them so much. They're so funny and they're so cute together, and I think that in order to truly like appreciate this book, you have to get to know them first by reading Daughter of Smoke and Bone and then going and reading this book. But if you have read that series, I would highly, highly recommend this book because it was just so perfect, and I gave this 5 stars. I mean, I love everything Laini Taylor writes, and this was just so cute and I loved it a lot. So yeah, I was really happy to read this. Okay, the next book I read, I read 2 1-stars in a row, so this is the first one. And I should have known better. But anyways, so the next book I read, it's called The 12 Sleighs of Christmas. I don't even know who's the author. By Jacqueline Frost. And I guess since her last name is Frost, she was like, I must write Christmas romance murder mystery books, because that's what this book is. So basically, I think this falls into the cozy mystery genre. So there is a mystery and like someone is murdered in this book, but it's not a very dark book. Like, it's like someone's murdered, but let's make some gingerbread cookies. Like, I thought this would be like kind of like a Hallmark movie, but in book form, because Hallmark Christmas movies are my guilty pleasure. I love them so much. Like, I would never get tired of them. So I thought it would be stupid in the best way, but it was stupid in the worst way. So basically, how do I even explain this book? Basically, this book follows this girl named Holly White, first of all. And it's interesting that this book and the next one star both follow people named Holly, but anyways. So we're following Holly White, and at the beginning of the book she's heading back home to Mistletoe, Maine, obviously, and she just broke off her engagement with her fiance because he started seeing someone else, so she's heartbroken. She's going back home to live with her parents for a bit, and every year, like, their parents have this farm, and every year around Christmas time they host these reindeer games, and they get a lot of tourists who come and they just do a bunch of like silly Christmassy activities. And at the beginning of the book, Holly gets home, she's helping her mom at her cafe, and then someone in the town is murdered, and so they have to shut down the farm to kind of obviously figure out who killed this person. And like the sheriff comes and he closes down the farm, and everyone is upset because now they can't do their reindeer games. And Holly is she's like, the whole plot hinged on her being stupid. Like, she was so stupid. So she is very upset that they closed the farm and that they like canceled the reindeer games because they have to look for the murderer in this small town. So like, there's only so many people it could be, and it's a small town, and we don't know if this person is going to kill again, but she takes it upon herself to try to find the murderer, which of course she does. And she does it in such a bad way. Like, she's not even trying to be sneaky. She's just openly asking people around the town like where they were when the person was murdered and when they were found dead, and if they had any beef with the person. Like, she's not trying to be secretive about it. And the sheriff keeps being like, stop doing that, something bad's gonna happen. And she's like, no, I don't think you should have closed the farm. And he's like, yes, I did. There's a murderer. So anyways, of course, like, she starts getting threats from the murderer, and she's like, whoa, I didn't think this would happen. And I'm like, what did you think was going to happen? And oh my god. So there's just so many things that happen in this book, and I just kept being like, what is happening? And like, after like 2 days they open the farm again because they can't find the murderer, so they're like, oh, it's probably fine now. And of course it's not fine. But anyways, I could go on and on about this book, but it was just so it was so stupid. And like, it was kind of entertaining to listen to. I listened to the audiobook, but like, I don't recommend this. I'm sure you've never heard of it, and now you can forget it ever exists. Like, it was so bad. And I gave this book 1 star. And also, another problem I had with this book is that like, literally every person that Holly talked to could have been the killer. Like, they all had a reason to kill this person, but then like, it's like the author just kind of randomly picked one of them and that's who did it. So like, you can't even try to make a guess at who did it because literally all of them like hated this person that died, and literally none of them had an alibi. And then like, the author just picked one of them and was like, here, this person did it. And I was like, that's not good writing. Anyways, I had a lot of problems with this book. I gave it 1 star. It was just really bad, and I don't recommend it. Please don't read this. Okay, the next book. The next book I read for the Winers Book Club, and this was a very controversial book among us. Some of us gave it 5 stars, some of us gave it 1 star. Me, I did. And that book was The Afterlife of Holly Chase, which I realized I read 2 books with very similar titles this month. I read The Invisible Life of Adaline and The Afterlife of Holly Chase, which I find funny. But anyways, The Afterlife of Holly Chase. I am so sorry, Sasha. I know you love this book, but I really hated it. It was, oh my god, oh my god. Okay, so this book follows our girl Holly, and she is a very bad person. She's very rude, she is very selfish, and we just hate her. And at the beginning of the book, she is just going around being mean to everyone who comes into her vicinity. And on Christmas Eve, I think, or Christmas, I forget, she gets visited by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, saying that if she doesn't change her ways soon, she's going to die. And she's like, haha, no. And so guess what? She dies. So when she dies, she, in her like afterlife, she is recruited to work at this company called Project Scrooge, who are in charge of being the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, and every year they choose a new Scrooge and they try to change them, basically. So they like spend the year learning about them and what they could do to help them like realize their ways and want to change and be a better person. So like Holly was a failed Scrooge, so now she has to work for the company. So she becomes the ghost of Christmas past. And so then it skips like 5 years for no reason, and so now she's working. She hasn't changed at all. She's still a really bad person, and the Scrooge this year is this 18-year-old boy who is very attractive, and Holly kind of becomes obsessed with him. And I cannot tell you how much I hated this book. I hated it. So first of all, Holly, like, we know where this book is going. We know that through this experience working at Project Scrooge, Holly is going to learn to be a better person. Like, we know this. But this does not happen until like 5% left of the book. And we're in Holly's head this whole time. And a point that was brought up during our live show, which like I agree with, is that people were saying that Holly had been through a lot in her life. Like, she lost her mom when she was really young. Like, she had a really tragic backstory, and she had been through a lot, and that's why she became the horrible person that she is. And like like, I understand that, and I agree that she went through this trauma and didn't deal with it very well, and it's understandable why she became the person that she did because of that. But I don't think, first of all, I don't think that gives you an excuse to be such a horrible person. Like, she was so horrible to everyone around her. Like, like, we find out in her afterlife that someone literally died because of her, like so I don't think that gives her an excuse to be the way that she is. I know it explains it, but still, it doesn't excuse her behavior. And also, even if it does excuse her behavior, I don't want to read a book where I'm in someone like that's head for 99% of the book. Like, I did not have a good time being in her head for that long, and even though she gets better by the end, I do not care. Like, I didn't want to be in her head anymore. It was driving me crazy. I could not stand her, and reading a whole book in her head was way too much. I was so annoyed by her, and every decision she made was such a bad decision. And oh my god, I also really hated the writing style of this book. Like, the author wrote it as if it was like 2009, and this book came out 3 years ago, and like Holly kept saying whatevs, and I was like, nobody talks like that. No one has said that word out loud maybe since like 2007. Like, so it's like just an adult author trying to write like a teenager, and I hated it. I really just did not like this book. So I'm really sorry, Sasha and Amanda, I know you guys like this book, and I respect your opinions. We can all like what we want to like, but I really hated this book. And I gave it 1 star, and you may see me talking about this book soon in another video coming up. Is all I'm saying. And that's that. Okay, we're finally at the last book. So the last book that I read in December was A Court of Thorns and Roses, or A Court of Thrones and Raisins, thank you Sydney, by Sarah J Maas. I can't believe it took me so long to read this book, because I have learned about my love for Sarah J Maas this year. But yes, I finally picked this book up. I started it like, did I even start it in December? I think I started it at the very beginning of December, and it kind of took me a while to get through this because, I mean, first of all, like, I was trying to read this while I was going through finals, and I just could not focus on this book. And then finally, when finals were done, I still was kind of having trouble getting through this book, because I found I would often, okay, my battery died, but I think I was saying that throughout this book I kept going back and forth between really interested and invested in what was going on, and then being kind of bored by what was going on. Okay, I need to explain what this book is about. So this is kind of very loosely a Beauty and the Beast retelling. So we're following this girl Feyre, who's a human, and she's kind of like the sole breadwinner of her family. Basically, their mom died when she was really young, and so she now lives in this like small cabin with her dad and her 2 sisters, and her dad, he was injured, and so he can't really work and he's kind of just given up on life, and her two sisters also just don't do much. So Feyre basically goes out hunting and provides them with food and all that, and she like sells pelts and stuff like that. So she's basically the only one who is keeping them alive. And one day she is hunting in the forest and she comes across this wolf, and for some reason in this world fairies can shapeshift into wolves, so she's not sure if the wolf is actually a wolf or a fairy, but she really needs to bring back some food for her family, so she decides to shoot it. So she kills the wolf and it turns out it was a fairy. So to make up to the fairies for what she did, she either can be killed or she can go live in like the fairyland and basically not really be their prisoner, but like she's forced to live there for the rest of her life. So she chooses that one. So she goes to live with the fairies and she meets the High Prince, I think is what he's referred to, named Tamlin. And I thought in this book, because like everyone knows about Rhysand and Feyre, and everyone ships Rhysand and Feyre, and everyone hates Tamlin. So I thought like we'd meet Tamlin at the beginning of this book, and then Rhysand would come along like very soon after. But we don't even meet Rhysand until like over halfway through this book. And I know that, like, I'm sure Tamlin will do something later on in this series that will make me not like him, but I really liked him in this book. And Rhysand I wasn't too crazy about, so I'm guessing that will change when I read more in this series, but for now, that's how I'm feeling. So anyways, so she goes to live and then things happen. Like, after that, I don't really want to say too much, but yeah, I just, like I said, I kept going back and forth between really interested and then being kind of bored. I did really like the ending of this book. I read the whole like last 200 pages in the New Year's Eve readathon that I did. So I read them at like 3 in the morning. I think I finished this book at like 5. I really did like the ending of this book, except like I heard a lot about that there's a riddle in this book. And oh my god, I found the riddle so stupid because I guessed right away what the answer was, and like this riddle basically, if Feyre guesses the answer right, like it could save her life, and it takes her forever to come up with the answer. And like I was buddy reading this with Rachel, and I sent Rachel a message being like, if this is the answer to the riddle, I'm gonna lose my mind. And then I was right, and like oh my god, I just thought it was so stupid, so that kind of bothered me. But aside from that, I really liked the ending to this book, and overall I thought this was a pretty good book. I gave it 3.5 stars. I don't like it as much as the other Sarah J Maas books I've read. So far I've read Crescent City and the first 2 books on the Throne of Glass series, and I like all of those better than this one so far, but I am interested to continue the series. I would really like to get the rest of the series with these covers because I hate those new covers, but these old covers are so hard to find now, so if anyone knows where they're still selling these, please let me know. I'm trying to find them. But yeah, I know everyone loves the second book the most in the series, so I am excited to get to that one, and I do want to continue this, so yeah. So those are the books that I read in December. I had a overall pretty good reading month aside from those 1-star books that I read. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if you like them or whatever you thought about them. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon with another video soon. Bye!